Imagine waking up and realizing you can't see your own hand in front of your face. Not because it's dark, because the air itself has turned into something thick, yellow, and choking. Every breath burns. Your throat feels like sandpaper. And outside your window, London has completely disappeared. This isn't a nightmare. This is December 5th, 1952. And you're trapped inside what would become known as the Great Smog. 5 days that turned one of the world's greatest cities into a suffocating death trap. Can you imagine walking down a street you've known your entire life and not being able to see 3 feet ahead, hearing footsteps but seeing no one? Buses abandoned in the middle of roads because drivers literally couldn't see where they were going. People collapsing on sidewalks, gasping for air that had turned poisonous. Here's the terrifying part. Nobody knew what was happening. There was no warning, no evacuation, no emergency broadcast. The city just stopped breathing. And over the next 5 days, more than 12,000 people would die. Not from bombs, not from disease, from the air itself. If stories like this fascinate you as much as they fascinate me, please subscribe to the channel, because what you're about to discover next will completely change how you see the city you thought was safe. Because just hours before this nightmare began, London looked absolutely normal. But something invisible was building in the sky above, and nobody was ready for what was coming. Let's go back to the beginning of December 1952. London is alive, bustling. The Christmas season is just starting, and the city feels magical. Picture this. Red double-decker buses weaving through crowded streets. Shopkeepers arranging window displays on Oxford Street. Children pressing their noses against toy shop windows. The smell of roasted chestnuts mixing with the scent of fresh bread from corner bakeries. And everywhere, absolutely everywhere, coal smoke rising from chimneys. See, this is post-war Britain. Families heat their homes by burning coal in small fireplaces. Factories power themselves with coal. Power stations burn coal. It's winter, it's cold, and everyone is trying to stay warm. Nobody thinks twice about the smoke. It's just London. It's normal. The sky always has a bit of haze. That's just what cities look like, right? Mothers bundle their children in wool coats and send them off to school. Factory workers clock in for their shifts. Office clerks hurry to catch the tube. Street vendors call out their prices. Life moves forward like it always has. But here's what nobody notices. The wind has stopped. The air has gone completely still. And all that smoke, from millions of chimneys, from hundreds of factories, from countless coal-burning stoves, has nowhere to go. It's just hanging there, accumulating, thickening. And on the morning of December 5th, something in the atmosphere shifts. The temperature drops. A weather phenomenon called a temperature inversion traps all that pollution close to the ground. And then the fog begins to roll in. At first, people think it's just another London fog. Thick, sure. A bit unusual, but nothing to worry about. Except this fog is different. It's yellow, almost greenish in some areas. And it has a smell. Sharp, acidic, like burning chemicals mixed with rotten eggs. When you breathe it in, your lungs protest immediately. Office workers step outside during lunch and start coughing, not just a polite clearing of the throat. Deep, rattling coughs that won't stop. Their eyes water, their chests tighten. Just the cold air, they tell themselves. I'll be fine. But visibility keeps dropping. By afternoon, you can barely see across the street. Drivers slow to a crawl, leaning out their windows, trying to follow the curb. Some just abandon their vehicles entirely and walk home, or try to, because now you can't even see the pavement beneath your feet. The elderly start feeling it first. Pensioners who've lived through 2 world wars suddenly can't catch their breath in their own living rooms. Parents notice their children wheezing, struggling with every inhale. Hospitals start receiving visitors, people with burning throats, chest pain, difficulty breathing. The doctors examine them, prescribe rest and warm drinks. It's just the fog, they say. It'll pass. But it doesn't pass. By evening, the fog is so thick that theatres cancel performances. Sporting events are called off. The BBC interrupts programming to warn people to stay indoors if possible. And in homes across the city, people are beginning to realize something terrifying. The air inside their houses is just as bad as outside. Because this wasn't just fog anymore. This was poison. And there was no escape. Here's what was happening inside people's bodies, and it's absolutely terrifying. Every breath pulled toxic particles deep into the lungs. Sulfur dioxide, coal tar, soot, heavy metals. This wasn't just dirty air. This was a chemical assault on human tissue. Your lungs have tiny hair-like structures called cilia that sweep out dust and debris. But this smog was overwhelming them completely. The particles were so fine, so concentrated, that they went straight into the deepest parts of the respiratory system. People with asthma felt their airways constrict. Those with heart conditions felt their chests tighten as their bodies desperately tried to get oxygen from air that had almost none to give. The elderly, already fragile, simply couldn't fight it. And here's the nightmare. Doctors had no idea what to do. They'd never seen anything like this. Oxygen tanks? They helped, but there weren't nearly enough. Medications? The standard treatments barely made a dent. Hospitals filled up fast, and medical staff could only watch helplessly as patients struggled to breathe. Some people tried wearing scarves over their faces. Others stuffed wet towels under doors. But the smog seeped through everything. It invaded homes, offices, underground stations. There was literally nowhere to hide. If you're finding this journey into the past as disturbing and fascinating as I am, please subscribe, because what comes next is even harder to believe. Because as the hours passed, something even worse was happening. The entire city was grinding to a halt. And when the emergency services couldn't reach you anymore, you were completely on your own. Imagine calling for an ambulance and being told, "We can't see to drive. We don't know when we can reach you." That's exactly what happened. Ambulances couldn't navigate through the smog. Drivers literally couldn't see the road markings, the traffic lights, or even the buildings around them. Some emergency vehicles got lost just blocks from the hospital. Others crashed into abandoned cars. Fire engines responding to calls drove at walking pace, guided by crew members walking ahead with flashlights that barely penetrated the thick yellow haze. Public transportation collapsed completely. Buses stopped running. The underground became the only way to move around, but even the stations were filling with smog seeping down from street level. People who went to work couldn't get home. Families were separated across the city with no way to reunite. And in thousands of homes, people were dying alone. Elderly neighbors who lived by themselves, parents too weak to care for their children, people who collapsed and had no one to find them for hours or days. The authorities tried to respond, but what could they do? They couldn't evacuate 8 million people. They couldn't clear the air. They couldn't even communicate effectively because the smog interfered with radio signals. The government initially downplayed it. Stay calm. Stay indoors. It will pass. But it wasn't passing. It was getting worse. Undertakers ran out of coffins. Hospitals ran out of beds. Morgues ran out of space. And still, the smog pressed down on London like a suffocating blanket, relentless and inescapable. By December 9th, the city was about to confront the true horror of what had happened, and the numbers were unthinkable. December 9th. The wind finally returns. The smog begins to lift. And London sees what it has done. The death toll is staggering. In just 5 days, over 4,000 people have lost their lives. But here's what makes it even more heartbreaking. That number will keep rising. Over the following weeks and months, an additional 8 0 people will succumb to the damage the smog inflicted on their lungs and hearts. 12,000 lives gone because of air. Funeral homes are overwhelmed. There aren't enough hearses. Families wait days just to bury their loved ones. Churches hold service after service. The grief is everywhere, suffocating in its own way. People walk through streets that are finally clear again and realize how many neighbors didn't survive. The elderly couple upstairs, the young mother down the block, the shopkeeper who always had a kind word. Can you imagine the silence? The guilt. Survivors wonder, why did I make it when they didn't? Parents blame themselves for not getting their children out sooner, even though there was nowhere to go. People who stayed home feel guilty. People who went to work feel guilty. And perhaps the darkest part, many people still don't know what killed their family members. Death certificates list bronchitis or heart failure. The connection to the smog isn't officially acknowledged yet. The government remains silent. No emergency declaration, no official death count, no apology. London has just experienced one of the deadliest environmental disasters in modern history. And most people don't even realize it yet. But this tragedy wouldn't be forgotten. And it was about to change everything. The Great Smog of 1952 did something remarkable. It woke people up. For years afterward, survivors dealt with chronic respiratory problems. Children who breathed that air suffered lung damage that lasted their entire lives. The scars were invisible, but permanent. But out of this tragedy came real change. In 1956, Britain passed the Clean Air Act, the world's first major environmental legislation. Coal fires in urban areas were restricted. Smokeless fuels were introduced. Industries had to reduce emissions. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. London's air began to clear. Slowly, year by year, the city could breathe again. And here's what's haunting. This isn't ancient history. There are people alive today who remember that December, who lost parents, siblings, friends to 5 days of poisoned air. Even more unsettling, air pollution still kills millions worldwide every year. Cities across Asia, Africa, and even parts of Europe face dangerous smog events. The causes are different. Cars instead of coal, industry instead of fireplaces, but the threat remains the same. We like to think we've learned, that 1952 taught us everything we needed to know, but have we really? So if stories like this matter to you, please subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments and stay with me, because there are many more forgotten moments like this waiting to be uncovered. Moments that remind us, nature doesn't forgive negligence, and the air we take for granted can turn against us faster than we ever imagine. London survived, but it never forgot, and neither should we.